Here's a really simple trick to help you determine size, distance, and scale in your perspective drawings. Hey, Walter here, and I wanted to go over one of my favorite perspective tricks. It's a great way to make your drawings look more believable, or just as a sanity check when something looks wrong, but you can't quite figure it out. It's really simple, so let's go ahead and jump in and see how to do it. So we start off with a simple 2D rectangle in our 3D space. Now we want to replicate this exact same rectangle as it moves further or further away towards the horizon. Now we could guess how big this would look, but if we're wrong, it could make the image look off or curve or weird. So to start off, we need to divide our rectangle in half. So this is the halving trick, which works for rectangles or squares. And if you put like a circle or a triangle inside of a square, you can figure out where the halfway point is of those objects as well. Okay, so now that we have our midpoint, we run a line from the vanishing point to this midpoint. And where it crosses the side of our box is the magic spot. So what we do is we run a line from the upper corner of the box through this point down to the bottom vanishing line. And this is going to help us determine the width or the depth of this box as it goes back into the distance. So let's draw this box in there, and now we know that these two boxes are identical sizes. And you can run this all the way back by just repeating this over and over again. Now, if you wanted these boxes to be equal distance apart but not touching, you could do this trick and just erase the boxes in between and do that all the way down. So you could erase these two boxes, draw that next window or box, and then draw two more, and then another one, and then erase those two boxes. Now, what if the distance between the two boxes was a length that was not a multiple of the box length? We're gonna have to do something a little bit more complicated to figure that out. So this is gonna be a little weird, and I'm also going to be showing off two concepts, but I'll try to explain it as clearly as possible. So let's say we are drawing two windows and we want them to be about this far apart. Now what do we do if we want to draw a third window the same distance away from the second window as it is away from the first window? We could use our intuition and draw it, which is what I usually do, and I'm usually wrong. But like I've said before, I am not an architect or a draftsman. I'm here to tell stories, and windows being equidistant apart doesn't really tell a story unless you're trying to make some kind of metaphor how we keep ourselves distanced from other parts of society, and you're trying to use the windows to show that off. Anyways, let's draw our vanishing lines. Now, we have to realize that we have an imaginary box right here that contains the window and the space between the two windows. So using our halving trick, we can replicate this imaginary box. This is step one. Get our midpoint and transpose this imaginary box length. Now this is where things get interesting. We know these two imaginary boxes are the same length, but look how much space each of these windows is taking up inside of this imaginary box. The first one is maybe 1/3 of the imaginary box, but the second window is about half the size of the imaginary boxes. So we know that these two windows are not the same length the way I drew it. So my intuition basically failed me here, which is what I was saying earlier about me usually being wrong. But I would also say that no one would have noticed this if I had characters talking or punching each other in the face or big rippling pecs to distract the eye. But I digress. So how do we fix this and also draw the third window? Come with me and you will see. Okay, so things are gonna get weird here, and there's going to be a crap ton of lines, but I will try to go slow. Okay, so we have our midpoint and our transposed length. Now we take the other corner of our window and draw a line from that to the corner of the second imaginary box, the same point we created in the first step. Oh man, I am running out of colors here. Okay, so hang with me. See this point? It's where the line we just drew crosses our middle line, our halfway line that we drew at the beginning. I know, so many lines. Anyways, this point shows us the length of the second window. So let's draw that. Look how far off I was. It's hard to tell because there was only two windows before, but if we did more windows, it would start making the building look like it was crazy wide or even curving back towards the reader. Inception. Okay, back to our windows. Now we do the same thing to find the third window. line from the upper corner through the side mid. Now we draw a line from the top of the second window to the point we just found. Where that line crosses is our middle vanishing line, and where the edge of the third window lands, draw our window using those lines, and then remove the guidelines. Now look at the lengths of our imaginary box and the windows. They shrink really quick, and this is one of the trickiest things to intuitively see when you're working with perspective, and why a lot of perspective drawings end up looking off. I did another video on how not to draw perspective, so check out that video if you want a little bit more detail about this. Now we could do this for several more windows. Eventually it would be too small to actively measure, and you could do this trick on horizontal boxes as well. Here's a quick bonus tip. Let's say you have a character and you want to draw other characters in the background, but you want the sizing to look correct. So we take our character, we draw our perspective crap in here. Now we want another character the same height in the background. We use the vanishing lines of the character's top of his head and his feet as a guide. Notice how the horizon line cuts through the exact same point on each of the character's body. Now what if we wanted a third character but off to the side and maybe not as far back? We end up doing this. Now we have our 3 characters, and we can use all of these things to figure out how tall doors would be, or how long cars would be, how tall they would be, lamp posts, benches, all of that stuff. We can use all of these tricks to figure that stuff out and make it look more believable. Now I'm gonna say I think all of this stuff is great for practice and also for figuring out things when it looks wrong and you don't know why. But doing all of this for every drawing you do, especially if you're making comics, is going to take forever, and there was no way I would do this for panels that I'm drawing for comics. But everyone's different. I know a lot of people like doing this stuff and make their drawings look awesome. So if you want to do that, more power to you, but you don't have to, and you don't always have to be correct or accurate or perfect with your perspective drawings. And there's a ton of other ways to figure out perspective, especially if you're working digital. Let's say you draw these 2-dimensional windows. It's really easy to figure out scale and length when you're working in 2 dimensions, because you can just use a normal ruler or just copy and paste the windows next to each other and you know they're all equal. But if you want to put this now into perspective, we draw our horizon lines and our vanishing lines, and then we can just use transform tools to get this 2-dimensional drawing into our 3-dimensional perspective view. Different programs are going to have different methods and different tools, but hopefully you'll get the general idea on how to do this from this video. And that's it. Simple, right? Maybe not when you have to listen to me talk about it, but do it a few times and it will become more ingrained, more second nature, or at least third nature. Now I want to say again, I don't do this for every drawing or even any drawing unless something looks really wrong and it's driving me crazy and I can't figure it out. And if anything, it's just a really cool party trick to show off and be adored by millions, or at least a handful or a few. I bet your parent would be really impressed by it, so show them. And be sure to subscribe for more videos about comics and art and all that craziness. And if you want to help support the creation of these videos, check out my online store or my Patreon. And always be sure to like, link, love, hug, and sub for more sweet, sweet goodness. Peace. Did you subscribe? You know you want to. Hit that subscribe button. Do it.